Good day, Grade 8s, and welcome to the WorksheetCloud Grade 8 Natural Sciences lesson. I am so glad that you could join us, and happy greetings to each and every one of you. If you have a question during the lesson, please can you send an email with your question to grade8@worksheetcloud.com. If it's your birthday today, happy birthday! Hope you have a wonderful birthday. Please know how loved and special you are, and hope this year brings peace, love, joy, and hope. And I have a special message for you birthday people from my two boys.
Today's gonna be A-okay, cause we're celebrating your birthday. Happy birthday to you, celebrating your birthday.
If you have just joined our Worksheet Cloud lessons now, my name is Mrs. Inston, and I'm the Worksheet Cloud Grade 8 Natural Sciences teacher. And if you've been part of our lessons and you have watched all of our lessons up until now, welcome to you. I'm so glad you could join us today, and thank you so much for making the time and effort to be here. So those of you that have been here before, you know you need to get your notes and everything ready. Those of you that haven't, just pause the video and go and make sure you have your books or your files or your notes and something to write with. So for our lesson today, we're going to keep with the theme of density, but we're going to have a look at scientific investigative skills. So we're going to focus on the scientific method and the process skills, because I think that these are really important skills that you learn. I think we can't just focus on the content. I also want us to look at comparing and contrasting the densities between a solid, liquid, and a gas. I'd like to teach you today how to write a method, and we will revise some tabulating and graphing skills. Okay, so the first task I'd like us to engage in is trying to put the steps of the scientific investigative process in with these pictures. So just take a moment and go through and see if you can identify which pictures go with which skills. So if you need to pause this video at any stage, please do. So the first thing that's important in any investigation is the observation skills. And that is where we use our senses. We use our eyes, our sense of smell, our hearing, our touch, our tasting to take in and observe the phenomena and scientific things around us. The next thing that causes us to do is then we start asking questions. What, where, when, why, how? From developing a research question, we are then able to formulate a hypothesis. And after you have written a hypothesis, you are then able to write a methodology. And then after you've written a methodology, we are hoping that you are able to carry out the experiments. And then after you've done the experiment, that's going to allow you to collect a whole set of data. And with that data, you need to learn how to present it using graphs and tables. And then you need to analyze that data. So you then need to be able to find trends and similarities and differences and compare and contrast and pull all your data together that you collected into an analysis and into a presentation. And then lastly, let's just move out the way. And then lastly, you need to be able to write a conclusion. So I think what is important is for you to pause the video now, write down the 8-step process, and to help you remember, you can use little pictures and images, and you can make a nice sketch note page that you can study from. So often when you are at school, your teacher will ask you to write up a scientific report. And this is just an example of a rubric that your teachers could use. Every teacher draws up their own rubric depending on what it is they want to assess. But often you will need to write out your topic or your question. And then from that, you'll need to be able to make a prediction or write a hypothesis. Then you often need to plan your investigation and write out the method. Then you'll need to devise a table for how you are going to record this data. And then if necessary, you can translate that data into graphs and charts. And then you will need to be able to analyze those graphs and charts and write some type of communication, some type of discussion where you communicate and evaluate the data that you have got. And then lastly, you need to be able to pull it all together into a conclusion. So we're going to use our little prac today to give you an opportunity to practice this scientific skill. So the first thing that I'm going to teach you is how to write a prediction, or what is a prediction. So a prediction is a guess about what might happen in the future, or what might happen in the scientific investigation. It is often based on the observations. So you are going to see something, smell something, touch, taste, feel, and from that observation, you are going to be able to relate it to other skills such as observing, inferring, or classifying. Then you need to be able to write a hypothesis. So what are you going to do in this experiment, and what do you predict is going to happen? And you also need to ensure that you are able to identify the independent and dependent variables. So remember, the independent variable is the input, the dependent is the output. So the independent are the different criteria that you are wanting to investigate. The dependent variable is your results that you are recording. What are you getting out? When you write your hypothesis, it must be a statement. It is not allowed to be a question. It must include both the variables, and you must use the appropriate scientific language. So please remember, your hypothesis is not allowed to be a question. So today you are going to have a chance to compare the densities of a variety of solids and liquids and maybe gases. So I'm hoping you can find these materials and apparatus around your house. So you need 4 identical cups, preferably paper cups or plastic cups. If you don't have that, any glass cups, ceramic cups, whatever you've got. And then go around the house and see if you can collect different solids, liquids, or gases. So sand, flour, water. Then it will also help if you can get a kitchen scale where you can measure the mass of these substances with. So I am not giving you the method. The skill of today's lesson is you are going to be learning to design your method yourself. So first, I want you to brainstorm, how are you going to conduct and carry out this investigation? How are you going to record these results? So this planning is a rough draft of your method. And in blue, I've highlighted that there are several different thinking maps that you can use here to make your thinking visible. And I'm going to show them to you now, but I will come back to this slide. So here are a variety of thinking maps that you could use. And the ones that I've identified, the map that you might be able to use is like a bubble map or a concept map, where you are able to describe the different activities that you want to do. And the other map maybe that is more suited to a method because of the step-by-step manner is possibly a flow chart. So you can think about using 1 or 2 of these just to sort out your planning. So once your planning is done, you need to write your proposed method in your notebook, and I will go and show you the steps that we have to follow. Then while you're doing that, I also want you to think about what will your table look like that you are going to use to collect your results. Then I'd like you to, with your parents or caregivers' permission, who's ever looking after you at the moment, I would like you to get their permission to carry out the investigation. And what you can do is, as you carry out the investigation, whatever you do, each step along the way, you write it down, because that is actually what you would have done step by step. So always remember to write down the instruction. Every step needs an instruction, and then a description of the equipment and units that you will be using. Then I want you to ensure that you summarize these steps and that they're all in sequence, and that each step must only have one instruction. So while we're still on this page, if you need to get all of this down, please pause the video and at any time and record what you need. So just as a reminder, in this investigation, you can either compare the densities of 2 or 3 different solids, so flour and sand and chili powder or something like that, or you can compare the densities of a solid versus a liquid versus a gas. So you decide what observations you would like to make, and you carry out your investigation. Okay, then we're going to get to results and observations. So you need to go and carry out the investigation. Then what were the results? You need to summarize them. You need to be able to draw a table and possibly a graph. If you were able to measure the mass of each cup, show the calculations for the density of each material. So if you think about it, while you are working on your method, if you are looking at the density, in order to calculate density, density is mass over volume, which means you need your kitchen scale to calculate the mass, and your volume needs to be the same. So please think about all the variables that you need to keep the same. Then you're going to have to analyze and evaluate your data. So did anything go wrong in the experiment? If so, what? And I think it's important that you record that. And then can you think of any improvements that you could make? So if you had the opportunity to redo this experiment, what improvements would you make? And what steps did you include to ensure fair testing? Remember, fair testing is to keep all the fixed variables the same. So the size of your container will need to be the same. The volume, you need to use the same volume of solids. Obviously, their masses are going to differ, and essentially at the end of the day, we are expecting their densities to differ. Once you have carried out the experiment, you need to write a conclusion. And so basically, what is your answer to your investigative question? While we're going through the process, please will you also identify the variables. So in this case, your independent variables is the different substances you are using. Your dependent variable is going to be the different densities, which you are going to have to calculate, which means for each substance you've chosen, you need to be able to record the mass and you need to be able to record the volume. And if you can't remember how to do this, please go back to our previous density questions where we've explained it to you. Then you just need to ask yourself, do you need to have a control? And then what variables need to be kept the same? So in order to ensure that we have a fair test, what needs to be kept the same throughout the experiment? So the other thing you need to have a look at are the results. Some results are qualitative, which means you are using your observations and you are able to tabulate these. So what can you see? What can you touch? What can you smell, taste, hear? However, I think with the density experiments, I don't think our results are actually qualitative. Our initial observations may be qualitative, but in terms of our results, they're quantitative. You are recording a density, you are recording a mass, you are recording a volume. You are using equipment that's able to give you a numerical value that you can work with, and you are using units. So you are definitely able to tabulate and possibly chart or graph your data. Just a reminder what criteria are assessed when you are going to do a table for your results. Remember to give your table a heading, and in your heading you must describe both your independent and your dependent variable. So the independent variable are the different substances that you've used. The dependent variable is the density that you are calculating. The layout, it needs to have rows and columns. You need to use grid lines, which means you need to have blocks, and these grid lines need to be drawn neatly with a ruler. If you think you are going to make a mistake, then I think do the table in pencil first, and you can always add the ink later. You can choose your appropriate column and row headings. Just remember that normally the first column is your independent variable. All the blocks in the table need to be filled in. There mustn't be units in the body of your table. All the units must be in your row or column headings, and you must enter the data into your table. So once you've carried out your experiments and you've recorded the mass and you've recorded the volume and you've done the calculation experiments and you have this all in your table, you can then check that your table is complete, and if you've got time, you can draw graphs and tables. You don't have to for this exercise. So long as we are just revising your tabulating skills, that should be fine. So make sure you write down your observations. Definitely make sure you do a table. If you want to test your graphing skills, please do. You can. Any skill you practice is going to be beneficial. Then in terms of analysis and evaluation, when you are writing up your discussion, please make reference to the values in your graph, or make reference to any trends in the table that you see. Make a note of anything that maybe went wrong in the experiment and any improvements that you could make. So definitely evaluate your project with improvements and recommendations. And then write your conclusion. So what are the answers to your investigative question? Did you prove your hypothesis correct or incorrect? What were the main findings? And then in order to evaluate how the lesson went, you will find the worksheets under our WorksheetCloud activities that are posted with the lesson. The memo should also be there, so you'll be able to go through and have a look at the guidelines. I think what's also a really good idea is when you do get back to school, make some time with your teacher so that they can help you go through the scientific method and that you have a good understanding of how to write up a scientific report. It really is a valuable skill to learn. So I do hope you go and have fun today. Go and enjoy experimenting in the kitchen. Go and measure mass and volume and practice these calculations and practice writing up this report. And just have a little bit of fun. Science isn't always content. So here is just a revision and a recap for you to remind yourselves of all the steps that are involved in the scientific method. So if you didn't get them down earlier, here's a chance for you to get them down again. So you can pause the video and just remind yourself of the steps. And then I am always motivated by this quote, and Nelson Mandela definitely is a global hero. And I just want to say to you that things always seem impossible until they are done. And I think that you felt that this remote learning was absolutely impossible. So I do hope it is a temporary situation, and you have just proven that it's possible. You have proven that anything is possible if you put your mind to it and you just get it done. So I am really, really proud of the work, the time, the effort that you've put in. I really hope that you enjoyed these lessons. I love putting them together. And please remember, if you have any questions, send them to us, grade8@worksheetcloud.com. We look forward to hearing from you. And I really want to extend all my thanks to WorksheetCloud that was able to bring this lesson to you. So grade 8s, thanks for joining us today. Like I say, if this was your first day and this lesson was new to you, please go back and look at the other lessons, and I look forward to you joining us for our future lessons. So thank you to WorksheetCloud. Goodbye, grade 8s.